Don't allow the 3 months that you were supposed to be in that to turn into a year because you allowed doubt to take over the moment God told you to leave. What typically happens when you're stuck in a cycle is you end up in the same thing over and over and over repetitively, and you have no clue how you continue to get there. Because every single time you exit out of it, every time you choose something new, it shows back up but in a different way. So it makes you believe that it's okay, that it's changed, that it's different, that it's not the same thing. But you're testing it by your feelings and not by your spirit. You're testing it by the words that it's saying, not the actions that it's taking, or not behind the character of the action, because you can be love bombed. People can do kind things for you and ultimately make you feel good about yourself. But you don't even look past the actions and the things that they do to cover up their true face card. You don't look at how they respond when you set boundaries. You don't test them to see how they truly operate outside of that thing that they're doing to keep you bound. So the moment God tells you to leave, and you've already been questioning this thing time and time and time again, the moment that God tells you to leave, you're like, but they do this, but they do that, but I've never experienced this before. But God, how could this be a bad person if this, that, and the third? Not knowing that God isn't saying that they're a bad thing. They're just not a God thing. They're not for you. What typically happens with recurring cycles is you tend to be in survival mode. Survival mode is more than being dependent upon something for financial gain. Survive or security. Survival mode can also be emotional. You've never felt seen or heard, and this person listens to your problems and they are a shoulder to cry on. So you are being fulfilled by the way that they show up for you emotionally. So you have latched yourself to them and you are surviving off of them now. So the moment that God tells you to move, you are afraid to move because you don't know if you'll find somebody else that will listen to you the same way that they do. So you're dependent upon them because of survival. And when God calls for separation, you try to latch onto them as hard as you can because you're afraid that you will miss out or that you won't be able to get what it is that they've provided for you, thinking in lack. So you'll start to deal with things that you're not even supposed to deal with. It does not line up with your value. It does not line up with who you are, and it does not make you feel good about yourself, but you're okay with accepting that because they fulfill something in you that you feel like cannot be fulfilled by anybody else, that it will be hard for you to find again. Typically, after you begin to accept that God is calling you to separate because all hell is breaking loose, you've prayed a certain prayer, you're asking God for certain things, and now all hell is breaking through in your life, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm just going through such a difficult time in life. This is spiritual warfare, and yada, yada, yada. It's not spiritual warfare, it's transition. And the way that God brings transition sometimes is through all hell breaking loose in your life. So that person walked away. You're losing friendships. You got fired from your job. You're not understanding why you didn't get approved. You're not understanding why things are going the way that it's going. All hell is breaking loose. And you just swear up and down that it is spiritual warfare when actually it is transition. But God knows that you will not move if things don't get rocky for you. You'll stay in a comfortable position. And the comfortable position is why you stayed in this situation so long in the first place, because even though you weren't satisfied or fulfilled, it felt familiar to you and it was comfortable enough for you to survive and make it day to day. So typically after you pray these prayers and all hell breaks loose and you begin to embrace and accept this separation, and in most situations you have no choice but to accept it because the other person has now turned a cold shoulder to you, which is God's protection. Rejection is God's protection. You're not getting denied for no reason. It's for a specific reason so that you can be released, because ultimately you weren't supposed to be attached to this thing in this way, and you've made it your source and became dependent upon it. So now you can't even see where God is trying to lead you. And when he gives you direction, answers to your prayers, you don't follow because you're taking counsel from this person before you're taking heed to what God is saying. There are things that you don't know, things that you have not seen, information that you're not privy to when it comes to the rooms that you're not in, that this person is in. Some of them are dragging your name through the mud. Not for everybody, but some people are not honoring you when you are not inside the room. And God knows that ultimately. So you're praying for peace of mind. You're praying to be connected with the right people, and God is removing you from the very people that are in your life currently through all hell breaking loose, because he knows that you would not leave if it did not. You're comfortable. And you suppress yourself to convince yourself that the situation that you're in and what you're dealing with is okay because at least they do this, when you can get this and that. Not to be greedy or to say everything's going to be perfect, but to say that you deserve a little bit more. You're settling in a lot of areas. So typically what happens when you start to embrace separation, all hell break loose. Some of this hell that is breaking loose is God transitioning you. And the other part of the hell that is breaking loose is spiritual warfare. So typically when you embrace separation and you say, you know what, God, this is not easy. I don't understand what's going on, but I accept what's happening, and I know that this thing is over. It's time for it to be over. It's time for me to move forward. I know what I'm believing for, and you start to get in that position of faith, even though you're shaky and you don't know, and you're sad about it, and you wish, and you're hoping and praying that reconciliation can happen and things of that nature, but you've accepted that it's time. When this typically happens, this is when spiritual warfare comes in. So now doubt will start to enter your mind. Now overthinking will start to enter your mind. Anxiety that will tell you, what are you going to do? What is the outcome going to be? Are you sure you want to leave this? All these questions will come up. Then you'll start to deal with lust in a way you've never dealt with it before. Now you want to overly sleep with this person. You want to manipulate them energetically. You want to chase them. You want to lock them down. You want to possess them. Spiritual warfare will come up against you to cause you to go back to what you're trying to be delivered from. Because every single time you allow the enemy to use you emotionally, he is being paid. You are paying the enemy through your energy. That's how he gets paid, because he can use your very energy to wreak havoc and do all kinds of things. So every single time you allow yourself to be used, you are working for the kingdom of darkness, and the enemy is getting paid off you. That's why a lot of people, you end up in situations with narcissists. You end up in situations with people who don't mean you any good, and they're constantly draining you to where you don't even have energy to focus on your purpose or your passion. So that keeps you in delay, and you're constantly pouring into them, and they're going to use your energy for things that are not even divine. They're going to use your energy to cheat. They're going to use your energy to cause chaos. They're going to use your energy to go spend money recklessly. They're using your energy on things that are not pouring into purpose. They're using it in order to build themselves up while you break yourself down because you're being depleted and no reciprocity is coming to you. That's all intentional to keep you in delay. So when you accept separation, all hell is going to break loose in your life to cause transition, and spiritual warfare is going to come to sow seeds of doubt so that you'll go back and you'll say, this is too much for me. The whole point and purpose is to overwhelm you and keep you bound, because now you're trying to break free, and the kingdom of darkness will not be able to use you, and you will begin to prosper in your gifts. You'll begin to prosper in life. You'll begin to step out of poverty and lack thinking. The enemy wants you stuck in that place. Your lower self wants you stuck in that place. The generational curses that are in your family want you to stay in that position so that they can continue to wreak havoc in your bloodline, so they can continue to wreak havoc in your generation, so that they can have your children's children's children. So when you begin to break free from this and accept separation, spiritual warfare is going to come up against you to cause doubt, to cause chaos, to push you back and make you feel as if this situation is bigger than you and you might as well stay bound because it's not that bad. Once you get through warfare and you become aware of how the warfare is going to come up against you so that you can combat it differently, because you cannot fight anything that you're not aware of. If you go into a fight blind and you don't know that person's fighting mechanism, you don't know how they fight, you don't know their strategy, then you'll go in there blind and you might get knocked out. Any fight, people prepare for it. People study this person's skill set. They study their strength. And they come up with a strategy. They don't go into a blind fight. That's why when a street fighter goes into a boxing ring with somebody who is a skilled fighter who has trained, most likely the street fighter who was dominating on the street will not dominate in the ring, because the person who was trained, the person who was studying, the person who was creating a strategy and studying that street fighter, they're already up on a higher level because they know what they're fighting and what that fight requires in order for them to win and gain victory. So you can't fight anything if you are not aware of what you're fighting. So when you become aware of the spiritual warfare that is coming up against you and why you even got caught up in this situation in the first place, you will know what you're fighting, so that you then can create a strategy that's going to keep you out of being bound within this, because you see what it is that you were up against. You see how you agreed with it. You see how you got here. So you have to become aware of what your door opener is to you continuing this cycle, and how the enemy continues to tempt you to go back. So awareness is going to be your key to freedom. But just because you are free and you are outside the door does not mean it's a guarantee that you'll stay out of it. This is where obedience and trust comes in. Trust will keep you moving forward. And obedience will keep you completely out of the door. So take heed to how God is leading you so that you don't turn back to what you ultimately want to be free from. So most of the time, when we go into separation, we finally accept it and the warfare comes up. If you continue to fight this fight and become aware of what you're fighting and why you're fighting it, you will then become aware of what you've been stuck in. And from there, you can create a strategy to stay outside of it. God will then call you into transition. A part of your transition was all hell breaking loose and people starting to cut you off. The relationship started to go sour. You got fired from your job. But in order for you to continue in your transition and align with it fully, you had to be separated and accept separation. So when you come out of being separated and you accept separation, you'll go back into more transition to where you won't crave the same things. You won't want to indulge in the same things. You won't want to hang out with the same people, nor will you want to keep the door open to them. You're in transition. The way that you can identify you being in transition is by seeing the things that you no longer like that used to appease you. That's how you know things are about to change fully and you're about to go into isolation. When you get into isolation, this is God's time to restore you. This is God's time to bring everything that you lost back to you, to remind you of who you are, to pour into you and do deep work in you so that when you step out of isolation, because you gain restoration, you would then be able to receive breakthrough and you can handle it fully, and you will no longer go back to what you were bound by because you have became new in God. You became new in Christ. You became a new thing, a new creation, and you've accepted it and aligned with it fully because you were aware of your transition. You took heed to your transition. You aligned yourself with it. You accepted separation. And from there, you allow God to isolate you and work on you so that you can experience your breakthrough and not fumble your bag. We fear isolation because we think loneliness. I'm going to be by myself. That is the furthest from the truth. You can be in isolation and God will still allow you to go out, but he won't allow anybody to have direct access to you to where you're in a relationship, to where you have a lot of close friends. He's not going to allow people to be in your intimate space because ultimately he knows what your struggles are. So embrace isolation. You may still be able to go out to the coffee shop and have chit chat with people here and there, talk to people on the phone every now and then to receive restoration through other people and things of that nature. But you won't be in a relationship and nobody will be able to be in your intimate personal space because you are being restored. So if you came from overcompensating and people pleasing, God is going to keep you in a position to where you won't be able to do that. So if you invite people into your space intimately, or you step out from isolation prematurely, you are then going to go back to the very thing that you were bound by. You already had to embrace transition. You already had to accept separation. You already had to cry, beg, and plead and pray and get back into right standing and fast and do all the hard things. So if you step out prematurely from your isolation or allow somebody to be in your space intimately and then you connect back with that door opener, you're going all the way back to square one, where then you'll have to go back to separation, isolation, transition. You have to go back and do all of that over again from ground one because you opened up the door back to this cycle. So isolation does not mean loneliness. Isolation means protection so that you can be restored. And when you step out to receive everything that God has promised you, everything that you've been praying for, you'll be able to handle it fully. You'll know what boundaries and parameters and standards you're not willing to compromise because you know what cycle has carried on in your family and in yourself. So you're not going back there. So you'll set different boundaries to say, I am celibate. I am courting to be married. I'm not going to give my body up or give access to anybody. So my boundary is I will not be in intimate spaces that can cause me to backtrack on my commitment and cause me to open back up this door of overcompensating and people pleasing and fornication, because that was a cycle that was open in my life. I always slept with everybody I was with, became attached to them, had children out of wedlock. Broken marriages was a generational curse. within my family to where we never seen a healthy marriage. So I wanted to break that cycle to where I would be in a healthy marriage so that my children can be in healthy marriages. And I would no longer fornicate and tie myself spiritually to people through fornication and be in unequally yoked relationships or situationships. So my goal is marriage. So I set the boundary that I will no longer be in intimate spaces that can cause me to backtrack and deal with people, please, no overcompensating to open up that door. Because my door opener to going into the cycle of fornication, to going into the cycle of situationships, to going into the cycle of unequally yoked relationships, my door opener was people pleasing. I wanted to appease people more than I appeased myself and stayed grounded on the standard I set for me because I felt bad. So my door opener to that cycle was people pleasing. So now you're dating this guy, right? And the guy, y'all have been out on a date, y'all having a good time. You're really fond of him. You think that he has great potential. This could maybe possibly be your husband. This is what you're thinking. One day, he does not want to go out to dinner because he's had a long day. He's tired. He really just wants to stay in and have one of those nights. So he's like, man, I don't really want to go out to dinner, but I can cook at my house. I love cooking. I would love to cook for you. We can drink some wine and we can hang out. You set a boundary for yourself to say, I will absolutely not be in any intimate setting with any man that will cause me to compromise myself. But because you are fond of this guy, y'all have been hanging out, you really like him, you think that he can be your partner for life. Because you really like him, you start to feel bad about saying no to him and standing on your boundary of you not being in intimate spaces with men because you do not want to compromise. So you start to feel bad because you don't want to hurt his feelings and turn him down to stand on your boundary that you set ultimately to protect yourself so you don't go back into this cycle and you stand on your why. So you go to his house for dinner and he cooks y'all, drink wine, and you end up breaking your celibacy, going back into fornication, back into the cycle you're breaking from, and now you're bound again, and he ends up showing his real face, and he's not even the man that you thought he was. The door opener to this cycle was people pleasing. You didn't identify your why and stand fully committed on that, so it was easy to compromise when it came to your boundary and to please somebody else. And because you did not know your door opener to your cycle, you people please and open the door right back up to you being another reoccurring cycle where now it's going to take you months to get out of the situationship because you're attached to it. You have feelings for it. Now you're feeling shameful amongst many other things. So your door opener to that cycle that you're trying to break free from was people pleasing. You set the proper boundaries and standards so that you wouldn't go back into that cycle, but you did not set the boundary and standard to say that you would not people please. So the door opener to that cycle of fornication, of unequally yoked relationships, of broken marriages and things of that nature that you were trying to break within your bloodline and yourself, the door opener to that was people pleasing. You wanted to appease this man. You wanted to please this man. You didn't want to hurt his feelings. So in doing that, you did not stand firm on your boundary. You ended back up into the same cycle that you just got out of. And now you're in a situation that's going to be prolonged for months and months and months until you finally let it go and have to go back through separation. This is how cycles are formed. This is how we stay in reoccurring cycles. If you do not identify the door opener to your cycle, if you do not set boundaries and standards and identify your why to why you're setting them so you can stand on it fully and commit, then you'll continue to be in a reoccurring cycle in unequally yoked relationships and situationships to where they don't serve you and you know they don't serve you and God is calling you to separation, but you're afraid because you have latched yourself to them and made them your source because you are in a lack mentality, a poverty mentality to say that if you leave this, you cannot get anything better. A lot of us have came from survival mode to where we suppressed ourselves to survive, to where we suppressed ourselves to not upset that one person in the house, to where we suppressed ourselves to be able to stay in this relationship because it was providing for us. We grew up in survival mode to where suppression became our identity. So we began to suppress ourselves to survive throughout the world. So when you got into this relationship, you automatically suppressed yourself to the point where you started denying God's God's instruction because you are afraid to upset this person or this thing, and you didn't want it to walk away from you. So you constantly suppressed yourself. And because you were operating from a space of suppression, you kept yourself in a continuous cycle because you were afraid to use your authority and your dominion that God gave you to walk away, because you allowed the enemy, you allowed doubt, you allowed fear to come up against your mind and tell you that if you walked away from this, it was going to be a problem, that you weren't going to make it, that God would not carry you. You convinced yourself that that was truth and you stayed. I want to also touch on the fact that reconciliation can absolutely happen when it comes to this person you're being separated from. God will separate you from a person to work on you both individually, to bring you back together on a firm foundation with a different set of morals and principles and standards, so that longevity can be our portion and not toxicity, because y'all didn't have the right communication skills. Y'all didn't have the right resources. Y'all didn't know how to connect on certain levels. Trauma was played a part in many other different things to where y'all could not connect. Y'all weren't aware of spiritual warfare and how the enemy was coming against y'all's relationship on top of past experiences as well. So God will separate y'all to do a great work on you both individually, to bring y'all back together so that y'all can be better as one as well as separately. But a lot of the time, if you allow your emotions to be played on, you will prematurely step out and you'll try to get reconciliation before it's time. And now you're causing more damage than you are good. And y'all are experiencing things that y'all weren't even supposed to experience. Or if you don't let each other go, y'all experiencing things that y'all were not supposed to experience. And now more hurt is in the relationship that wasn't even supposed to be there if you would have just let go and let God do his work, instead of you being afraid and thinking of a lack mentality as if you would lose this thing and it would not return to you. Reconciliation can absolutely be for you within the situation, but you have to let God do his work. You have to let go. You cannot be attached to things, because you'll begin to make them your source, and you'll start to think from a lack or poverty mindset to where you'll begin to possess that person and not experience them. When it's time to let go, let go. We're not going to be here forever. You're going to have to let go of things. Change is always constant. Also, a lot of the times in recurring cycles, you're human. You make mistakes. You're not going to always do things correctly. So shame plays a major part in staying in things that don't serve you, because you feel bad about what you've done. So because you feel bad about what you've done, you think that you have to accept anything that comes within this relationship because you're holding yourself to that past mistake. And that is the furthest from the truth. Hold yourself accountable. Apologize for the mistake that you made. Forgive yourself and ask for forgiveness from the other person as well as God, and keep it pushing. But that does not mean you begin to accept anything that comes because you feel bad about what you've done. No, if you want to move around and move in a different type of way, I'll release you with love, but I won't accept anything less than what I deserve because I made a mistake and was human. I accept the mistakes that you made and you were human also, and I accept your apology, but that does not mean this is tit for tat. This does not mean that this is a free-for-all. This does not mean that I have to accept anything that comes just because I made a mistake. So the enemy will try to keep you in shame, and because you are in shame, when it's time to separate, you'll begin to be like, oh, I wish I could have done this, and oh my gosh, and you're just feeling so sad about it because it's like, dang, I wish I could have done different. It happened the way it was supposed to. A lot of the times we don't have the capacity for certain things. So you can't beat yourself up because you didn't have the capacity to handle this thing and you never were taught what true love was. You can't be upset with them because you begged and you pleaded and you cried for them to be able to provide you certain things, and they didn't have the capacity at the time to provide that for you, and now they learned through you and they're giving it to somebody else. You can't be bitter, broken, or upset from that. What happened in this relationship does not equate to your value. You're still valuable. You're still worthy. You will still ultimately be blessed and you will win in the end, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. Sometimes people come into our life for us to learn and for us to grow and for us to become for the next thing. And that's just life. So don't let shame keep you shackled to something that no longer serves you. Don't let shame allow you to be in something that will cause you to be in agreement with spirits of insecurity, because you're allowing things to slide that are secretly breaking you because you feel bad about what you did and you think you have to accept that. Detach from the idea that you fell in love with in your mind. That is what is keeping you bound. You fell in love with an idea. and you want that to play out how you've seen it. So you will begin to manipulate and suppress and stay and fight and block the door and block the other women and do all kinds of things to keep yourself bound to it, because ultimately you want the thing that you see in your mind to come to pass, but that may not be what God wants for you. That's why you have to detach from it, give it back to God, and work on you, because you've been suppressing a lot of yourself in order to stay in this when ultimately it does not serve you. It just serves the idea that you fell in love with in your mind. You will attract what it is that you think about. You will attract what it is that you align yourself with. You will attract what it is that you want in your heart, especially when you place yourself in the positions and the places and do the things that you need to do to make it happen. Manipulation is what a lot of us use to make things go our way. And then when it happens, we don't really want it. We don't even see, we didn't even understand that it came with this much responsibility. We didn't even see that it did not serve us fully. We were just going off of our feelings. So you can manipulate and convince yourself to say, oh, God sent this, and God didn't send it at all. It's the idea that you fell in love with in your mind, and you begin to play it out and act it out and make things strategically aligned. And then when you got it, you start to see that it was not for you. It was working against you the entire time. So detach from the idea that you fell in love with your mind. If you find yourself constantly stuck in reoccurring toxic relationships, unequally yoked situations, and you are bound to them, you feel like you can't leave, you don't know why you keep going back, you do it unconsciously, then this is for you. I created a course called How to Break the Cycle of Unequally Yoked Relationships. It's going to teach you how you continue to be bound. It's going to show you how to identify the door opener to your cycle and how to create a strategy to get outside of it and stay outside of it. Awareness is the key to breakthrough. Awareness is the key to you getting out the door. But just because you're out the door does not mean that you're out the vicinity. You can go back into that door at any time. You're still in the area. Obedience is going to get you further away from the door so that you do not turn back. And trust is what's going to catapult you to a new city, to where the door will be completely shut, but you will be aware now of how that door can continue to open. God, when he closes the door is closed, but the enemy will send you a counterfeit door to where you'll still enter into the household with the same door that you walked out of. Yeah, the closet door is locked, but you're still in the house where the same things that are inside that closet is in. So you might as well still have been in the door. So within this course, I'm going to teach you how to not only identify the door opener to the cycle you keep getting caught in, but how to create a strategy to stay outside of it, be obedient to God, trust his direction, and stay out of what you have been bound in. I'm also going to take you through the steps of how to get through the process of becoming unbound and to exit out of this relationship or relationships. I'm also going to take you through a step-by-step. It's going to be a video breakdown in details and in depth of how to get through the process of separating from this thing. I'm going to take you through separation, transition, isolation, restoration, breakthrough. What each step looks like, what each step is going to come with, down to the spiritual warfare and how to fight the spiritual warfare. I'm going to show you how you became bound to it, how you stay bound to it, and what you need to identify in order to see what you need to fight, so you know what strategy to create. Within this course is going to also be an ebook called Every Cycle You Need to Break, which is going to take you through how doubt is the door opener to every cycle and how you can break free of the cycle of self-sabotage, the cycle of delay, amongst many other cycles, and what steps that it takes you through. There are going to be charts within that ebook that shows you the step-by-steps of how you keep getting caught in this cycle and how you can pivot out at any time of this cycle. You can pivot. It's going to show you that as well. Again, we're going to go over spiritual warfare, how to combat spiritual warfare, how to identify the difference between transition and spiritual warfare. It's also going to teach you about how to put on the full armor of God to deal with spiritual warfare. There are many things that you're going to learn from this course, but I promise you, breakthrough is going to be your portion by the time that you are finished with it. And you're not going to be doing it by yourself. Each step of the process will also be articulated through a video just like this one, just how I'm talking to you now. So you're not going to be alone. There are journal prompts in there. There are spiritual resources and tools that you can use to help you fast. There are also going to be tools in there to help you gain deeper spiritual insight about spirit spouses and numbers and how to interpret numbers that God sends you. So if you are interested in this course, please feel free to click the link wherever you see in this video. If this is on TikTok, then you go to my bio on TikTok, click the link that you see. It's the very first option. Type in code TikTok to get it at a discounted rate. It's $50. You'll get it for $22. If you're on Facebook, use code Facebook. Same thing applies. $22. It'll be at the top. It will go from $50 to $22.